Hello and welcome to the Nerds at Large Best of 2020 non-gaming. Get the games out of here. We don't need them. I'm Darby Hellman.
I'm Jeff Mayo.
And I am special guest Jacob Hamill.
Back again. Hopefully not for 3.5 hours this time. I think we're going to rein this one in just a little bit. But Jacob, you doing well today?
I am. How are you?
I'm doing good. Excited to talk about all the things that were good in 2020 that made 2020 a little less terrible.
Yep, that aren't video game related.
They are not video game related. Get them out of here. I don't know. We don't get to talk about non-video game stuff that much here, so I'm kind of excited to talk about it. So the structure of this is that there's really not going to be a structure. I told these guys that they could pull things from literally anything that's not video game related. They could, it could be like TV shows, albums. I even said like charities or other things like that if you want to. So very wide open. You can do whatever you want. So we're just going to kind of relax and just talk about some good things from the year.
Talk about stuff.
That's what we do here. So I guess I'll kick us off since I'm like corralling this whole thing together. And the first thing that I'm bringing was a pretty surprising thing for me, and that was She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, which was a Netflix animated show that I had heard about some. I'm not even like I've only watched like half of the Avatar. I'm not even someone that watched a lot of I'm still in the process. I need to get back to it. But I wouldn't even say that I'm someone who watched because I think even as an adult, there's those shows like Avatar that kind of like bridge the gap between it's a kid's show, but also adults can enjoy it as well. So that's not even necessarily completely my thing, but so that's part of why I never really watched this one. But I heard a lot of people talk about how good the LGBT representation and everything was in the show, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna give it a try just on a whim, and started watching it, and then I just kind of got obsessed with this show. It's pretty much gay Avatar.
No, yeah.
which is actually pretty great, because I think this show, being able to see a show that's it reminds me a whole lot of Avatar, where it's it has some comedic, it's a kid's show in a lot of ways, but it also has there's some of the it's a lot more sci-fi than Avatar, but some of the things that it presents are actually super interesting from just you can make an actual drama out of this. But it was really, really cool kind of seeing that kids show, but and I do want to focus a lot on the LGBT representation, because I think it was pretty refreshing to see that in a kid's show and it's treated completely normally. In this universe, LGBT, non-binary characters, anything like that, that's just kind of the norm in this universe. And I kind of love that it's not treated like a source of trauma. It's not treated like any of the main problems, even from the villains of the story. It's just people are gay in this universe, people are trans in this universe, and it's just a thing. It's not, you know what I mean? It's not like this big traumatic thing, which I think there's a place for those type of stories, but it's also kind of nice to just have it hey, let's focus on the crazy big sci-fi bad guy and not the fact that this guy likes other guys or this girl likes other girls.
Yeah, I think especially in kids shows, it's probably good just to, instead of having the stories where that's a focus, just have it normalized.
Well, I think it's worth mentioning that She-Ra, the show that you're talking about, is a reboot of an 80s cartoon, which is based off of the Hasbro toy She-Ra, which itself was supposed to be He-Man, but for girls.
Correct. Yeah.
Which, funny enough, when He-Man was very popular, and then when they put out She-Ra because of its popularity, that actually diminished the popularity of He-Man, because all of a sudden the idea was oh, well, He-Man's not cool enough because now little sister can be the hero of the universe. So I think the origins of She-Ra are very very sexist in a way.
Yes.
And it's really fascinating to see this new reboot series kind of, I think, really flip that around and be empowering to LGBTQ folks as well as women in general. So,
yeah, it's kind of cool how, and I think it's also valid to make your own thing, but it's kind of cool they took this thing that probably started from a problematic origin, but still kind of resonated with, I think, some queer folks like growing up, because I mean it reminds me of like the Final Fantasy VII dress scene and everything. I mean, the people making that scene were probably did not have the best intentions in heart, but growing up there was such a gulf of things to resonate with if you were a queer person. And so like you understand how people attach to this, but it's really cool that in 2020 or 2018 and 2020 when this came out, you can take something like that and then just like kind of you kind of go past the original creator's intent. It's like it's not theirs anymore. It's like, it's what you want it to be. And that was very powerful. And hearing Noelle Stevenson, the writer, which I'm definitely going to pay attention to everything she does now, and her talking about that kind of dichotomy and how they keep a lot of the general premises, but some of those characters they just completely changed how they were, and I think it works very, very well. As far as that is concerned. And I don't know, I just think that this was something for a kid's show. This feels like one of the most important shows I've ever seen, because this is just something that simply would not have existed when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. I'm not that old, but like when I was a kid, this wouldn't exist. I think Avatar is a very good example of that. I haven't watched Legend of Korra, but from what I hear of Legend of Korra, it was very obvious there was like characters that they wanted to be gay, but they like probably Nickelodeon people at the top couldn't let them, so they had to be like, oh, well, they're like really good friends, and use your imagination.
There's something at the end that makes that very clear that they wanted to do that, but they couldn't. Without going into spoilers, but people who've watched Korra know what I'm talking about.
Well, Korra got started back in 2014, I think, is when the first season came out.
More.
I watched it kind of more after the fact, so
right. But I think like the fact that
2012, it ended in 2014.
Okay, so I mean, I think, and I don't know when She-Ra first started, but I think it does
like 2 years ago. It sounds like
2018.
Okay, I mean, I think that just shows a lot, just how much has changed in 4 years and what is viewed as what companies and networks will allow as far as children's programming goes.
Because it sounds like even from and I might be wrong in this, I get some of these kid cartoons mixed up. I don't know if Nickelodeon does this, but it even sounds like just even the big networks, Cartoon Network, Disney and stuff, allow in these shows more of this representation, even it isn't big or as overt as She-Ra, but it's still there nonetheless.
And I think this is something that opens the door so much, not just in the sense that like big executives can see like, hey, we can do this and things can be successful. It's also, even Noelle talked about when she was making the first season of She-Ra, when she was like pitching this, this was not the plan the whole time. She didn't think that this would be allowed. Like the whole central romance that happens in the story, she really didn't think that was going to be something that she would be able to do, but then DreamWorks seemed that it was like completely open. And I think that empowers more creators to be like, oh, I like creators who are so used to bottling up and hiding everything when it comes to these type of issues. I think this is something that's like, oh wow, yeah, you can actually make a full Netflix 5-season run that has like an incredible finale, everything like story, and be unabashedly gay, which She-Ra is, and I loved it so much. It's great. And also I just think the characters and everything in this show were really, really, really well written, and it goes so much further than you expect. When I watched the first season, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is a fun kids show, and then by the like later seasons, I'm like, oh wow, this is something that could be in a sci-fi movie. Like some of the concepts that happen in here, it's like, like planets moving through space, like the like ancient civilization doing like, and some of the like it takes a lot of the hero, like this is the hero's mentor, the like whatever. It takes a lot of those things and like turns it on its head, where it's like people you think are good are bad, people you think are bad are good. It has an almost Game of Thrones-esque thing where they make you really hate a character, and then 2 seasons later you love them. It like does a lot of those. Nice. Very impressive. So She-Ra, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, it's a show I've been wanting to check out at some point.
Yeah, I think it might be it's not going to be for everyone. It's very like kid, some of the humor is going to be maybe too juvenile. I really loved it. Even, it's weird, like Avatar, I've struggled with some of the humor. Some of the humor of Avatar is kind of like taking me out of the experience. But I think Avatar is just like, lingers a little too much. I think there's too many sections of Avatar that I'm like, okay, let's move the plot. But I think She-Ra's pretty tight. Like all the seasons are pretty short, and it's like just kind of moves along.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Well, I guess to continue the train of positive representation in television and film, I watched this year the show Pose, which is it's an FX show. It's on Netflix. It is from the creative director Ryan Murphy, who's the guy behind American Horror Show, or American Horror Story, which is a show that I have pretty mixed feelings on. I'm not the biggest AMS guy or AHS guy, but Pose, I think he has more of a background role as a producer, and I think that makes Pose, I think, maybe a better show for it. I'm not trying to I am throwing shade, but anyways.
Throw that shade!
Anyways, so Pose is set, it's 2 seasons. The first season is they're both set in New York City. First season takes place in the late 80s. Second season is in the late 90s or in the early 90s. And it is about the ballroom culture in New York City during that era. There's a documentary film called Paris is Burning, which came out in 1990. It's a documentary film I actually watched while in college, and it's is about this culture, which is a center for African American and Latino and LGBTQ people to kind of gather and celebrate and to compete in competitions where they would normally be barred from in, I guess, like mainstream American culture. Mm-hmm. So these balls is where they go. There's live music. I think a lot of like genres like house and like techno and electro funk like has its origins at these balls with DJs mixing stuff together, and pretty much people would go out, they would dress to the nines, and they would compete against each other for trophies in various categories. And so the thing with this show is that it really uses that documentary Paris is Burning, which I would definitely recommend if you want to watch this show to watch Paris is Burning first, because that gives you, I think, a lot of background for what's going on. And the show absolutely uses that film as kind of like a textbook for building the show upon like that foundation. And so it is about various characters who are creating a house, and a house is pretty much a lot of trans and gay people of color. They'd be thrown out of their familial homes onto the streets. And so they would find shelter and kind of a sense of community and belonging in these kind of built families that are called houses, and the houses compete as a group in various categories. And there's a house mother or a father who, and their job is to kind of teach these young adults or these youths who've been thrown out of their homes, how to live and work and and survive out there. And it's just such a really powerful show. It's set in the late 80s, early 90s, and so the AIDS epidemic is a huge theme running throughout the show. The danger surrounding AIDS, which I think is something about we're about 25 years removed from the height of the AIDS epidemic. And I think it's something that we don't really think about much anymore. But and this show really explores just how deadly and dangerous and how medicine and care for people like these people who are in this ball culture, they just did not have access to adequate medicine and healthcare.
Yeah.
And so the mortality rate was staggeringly high, and it really does explore the
hell, even
of that
today
era.
with people, especially around where we live, even just talking about AIDS, people, like, it's something they want to quickly stop talking about. Like, they don't talk about it like it's an actual deadly thing that killed so many people. It's kind of something that you hush about even today in 2021.
Or joke about.
Or joke, yeah. Or very tasteless jokes about. But looking at the costume design looks great.
Yeah.
in that.
Yeah, I mean, the show begins with a group of people. They are breaking into a museum and they're stealing a bunch of artifacts, like fur coats and robes, and like the theme for the ball is like royalty. And so they come into the ballroom and they're really decked out, and then as soon as they win the award, the cops show up and arrest them.
Nice.
So it's various categories like that. It's really fascinating because it is. I mean, this whole culture is built around kind of creating something for yourself that society will not allow you to have. It will not. You know, a lot of these people, because they are either trans or they are gay, they're not allowed to have like good jobs, good paying jobs. You know, they are kind of stuck in poverty because of their identity. And so it's an exploration of kind of like an intersection between identity, sexual and gender identity, and class, and as well as like healthcare and access to that. And it's a really, really, really great show, really powerful performances.
Yeah.
And a lot of the actresses on the show, I mean, they have experience in the ballroom scene.
Yeah.
So they experienced that when they were young.
It sounds like it'd be a combination of like very entertaining and awesome, like talent wise and style wise, but also kind of depressing because of the actual.
Yeah, I mean, it gets heavy,
on.
But I think ultimately it is very uplifting and I really like.
So is this all like true story with true people, or is it a fictional story taking place within this real thing? It's
all fictional characters, although real houses and real people are mentioned.
Yeah,
like the House of Extravaganza. This is a famous house in New York, in the New York scene. They are mentioned, and I think characters from that show up. As well as, some important figures show up as background characters. Well, they'll show up as like judges. Okay. They won't have like a speaking role, but they will be like real people who are pretty famous in this scene. They'll show up as well.
Okay, cool, nice. And this is on Netflix.
Yes,
nice. Yeah, it looks cool. Sounds a very cool thing. Well, Jeff, you want to tackle one?
Let's talk about the movie of the year.
This is where we insert. I love it.
Movie of the year, by far the best new movie I saw in 2020, because it is the only one I saw. The only movie I saw was released in 2020, and that is, of course, Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah. What? So, how was? What representation did Sonic the Hedgehog? How was it groundbreaking in progressing social society, Jeff?
It showed that chili dogs should be. We should all accept chili dogs.
Should be coveted.
Yes, covered in it and all that kind of fun stuff. Yeah, only movie I saw. I guess this is it's a video game movie, so I'm bringing that in here. Gotcha.
You got the loophole.
No, not allowed. Damn.
Yeah, I have a loophole later too, so don't worry.
But yeah, this is a fun movie. I mentioned it, talked about it after I saw it. It is a kids movie, but it is a fun one. I think they did a pretty good, this movie is a lot better than it should have been, especially leading up to it. Just just what the movie was with the whole Sonic coming to the real world thing, which is something that's happened in other Sonic media, but this is literally in our world even more so.
Fish out of water.
Sonic's literally an alien that got teleported to our world to escape people. They honestly didn't go into that much detail to it. They kind of hint some stuff throughout, but yeah. But I think they did a good job adding that stuff in. And Jim Carrey's in it, and I admittedly have not watched Jim Carrey stuff in a long time, it's far from his best role in my opinion, but you get that nice taste of old style Jim Carrey in this, and he's just fun.
We all have some Jim Carrey nostalgia, whether we like to admit it or not.
Yeah. And I was wondering, like, okay, does this work for Robotnik? Like, it's doing this for a whole movie. It's like, okay, the way they're doing it works.
Yeah.
Especially as he kind of gets a little more unhinged. It's like, okay, I'll see how this works. Especially in the end where he shaves his head and has the mustache and everything, obviously going into the next movie, which is confirmed. They're filming.
It felt like the movie had the right amount of self-awareness.
Yes.
Which you have to have or you're going to screw up, They're trying to do this.
And they did some interesting stuff as far as like inserting Sonic stuff in there, like the way rings worked is just like magical teleportation devices, which is an interesting way to use those. And it didn't go heavy on the Sonic nostalgia. It sounds like they're going to do that more in the next one because of the end credits scene. Tails shows up, and Tails looks really good in that. In the CG, the new CG, I shiver think what he like in the old CG.
Oh yeah, that train wreck.
Yeah, and
release the Snyder cut of Sonic.
Yep, and they've confirmed in some interview or something, Knuckles is going to be in the next one in 2 as well. So that will be fun. So yeah, pleasantly surprised by this movie, and it's like, hey, I'm actually looking forward to a Sonic movie sequel. Never thought I'd see that day.
Wow.
Yeah. Yes, fun time. Probably.
That's awesome.
Like, again, this is not like a great movie. It's a good kids movie and all that kind of stuff. Enjoyable enough, but it's probably like one of not the best video game movie.
Can you believe
low bar?
Yeah, can you believe we got 2 incredible video game movies in 1 year? Sonic the Hedgehog and Monster Hunter. Just 2, just knock it out of the park. Video game movies are.
I haven't even seen Monster Hunter, but if someone says Monster Hunter is better than Sonic, get help.
The list of things that Monster Hunter is better than is probably not.
I'll throw this out there and make it timely with video games and a news thing real quick. So we're not recording a regular podcast. I'm blanking on his name. The Sonic voice actor for the last 10-ish years announced
Roger Craig.
Yes,
something.
Yeah. Craig Smith.
There you go.
Announced he wasn't doing it. I'd be okay with Ben Schwartz voicing Sonic.
I think Ben Schwartz is too popular to voice Sonic.
But if they announced that, I'd be okay with it.
Yeah, I think he's too big.
He's on DuckTales, Darby. DuckTales.
I know, he's huge. Yeah, I mean, maybe, but I would be a little surprised if that happened. Yeah. All right, my next one.
Had to bring it down a little bit,
My next one is we're going to music now, and this is a really weird one that I wasn't expecting. My music taste is starting to change a lot in the last few years. And mine is Japanese, like, don't know how exactly to classify her. It's like atmospheric pop / rap. Kind of. It's hard to completely pinpoint down, and that's part of why I love her music. I literally had to look how to pronounce her name earlier today because I had never heard it pronounced, and apparently it's Daoko. It's Daoko. But she was my #1 artist on Spotify this last year. Huh?
So that ain't Falco.
That ain't Falco. But no, actually, like, I really, really, really liked her music, especially her 2020 album, which is called Anima. It's like anime, but with an A at the end.
I think it means
I'm a
life.
weeb now. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it probably means. I mean, this is another weird thing. I don't listen to much like foreign music, much music not in English. This is like one of the first bands or artists I've really gotten into that sings in a language I don't understand. So it's really interesting. I don't know any of the lyrics, obviously, but just musically, her, like, every single one of her songs sounds like so different and weird. Like, they'll have like weird, like, atmospheric type effects, and she'll have like these like very like spacey type like effects on her voice, and then it'll go into this crazy like frenetic like crazy more rap song where like the electronic music, the beat just keeps going up and up and up and faster and faster and faster, and her like voice keeps getting faster and faster to like it like pumps you up and everything. And then there's other like the next song will have like saxophone in it and do a bunch of things. It's just listening to it. I'll often just do like the Spotify like overall playlist thing, and like it's a journey to like go through all these like multiple different things. And I think I'm starting to really like that in music when I've gotten into more like weird jazz fusion things. Like I like it when bands are very versatile and can like have a lot of different instruments and a lot of different like sounds weaving through this. And I don't know, this is one of the times that I've been the most impressed with someone's vocals, because I don't really listen to like much rap or anything like that, and this is very different because it's like this more high-pitched Japanese girl rapping, and it's like it's different like because it's not like low bass like rap things you would expect. It's more like it's strange. It's
kind of like a mixing of like kind of like bubblegum pop with
right. It's very interesting. I wish I could like play a sample or something. I might play something on the final edit of the podcast, but very impressive. I really enjoyed her, and I've got into several other. It's just like my musical taste is kind of going away from metal and a lot of the stuff that me and Jeff listened to for a long time, and I'm getting more into things like this. But
you should listen to Haru Namuri.
Okay.
She is also a Japanese artist, and she kind of mixes a lot of, I'd say, elements of like pop and Japanese rap with kind of noise rock and other kind of abrasive techniques. Really good artist. She put out an album that I liked a lot. It's kind of a mini album, kind of between like an EP and like a full album. It was like about 25 minutes. That was really good. I think it was called Love Theism. And then her album that she put out, I think in 2018, I really liked that one. So she's a good artist that you should check out.
Okay, yeah. Maybe send me that name again.
Have you heard of Baby Metal?
I do want to quickly shout out to another Japanese artist, Zutomayo. It's Zutomayo. She didn't have anything that came out in 2020, but I discovered her in 2020. I think I like her even more than Daoko. Like hers is more of like funk type things. Like the music reminds me a lot of Persona 5. Like it's a lot of that like bass mixed with fusion, mixed with like organ stuff, mixed with electronic. It's like a lot of things like that. But like her voice is just like killer. She just like belts things. It's like every one of her songs, it like starts off kind of like quiet, and then it gets to the chorus, it's like I think you would really like her. So I would shout out her too. So shout out Japanese music. I guess that's something I'm getting really into now. I'm becoming a weeb, Jeff. It's happening.
We got him.
It's slowly happening.
Alex, if you're listening, we got him.
All right, Jacob, hit us with another one.
Sure, yeah. So I think for the past, this would be the third year in a row where I've done kind of a list of my favorite albums of the year. And the past 2 years I did a top 40, and this year I was really kind of thinking, not that, I think, personally, I think like 2020 had like, I think for myself, like better music that spoke to me more than 2019. But when I was making my list, I was going to do a top 40. And then I kind of started to realize that, about 25 to 40, those records, I liked them. They were good records, but they didn't really speak to me on a deeper level. And so I just kind of cut it short to do it just a top 25.
So the case of not as many stuff spoke to you, but the stuff that spoke to you more than in 2019.
Yeah, exactly. And so I have my list right here. You can go read my full article on it, which is on my blog, which is jacobhamill.blog, where I kind of go into more detail. I'm not going to talk about every single album on this list because then we'd be here forever, but I'll just run through them and maybe zero in on a handful of them that I really want to talk about.
Hell yeah.
So 25, Eve's Tumor, Heaven to a Tortured Mind. 24, Idols, Ultra Mono. 23, I have The Strokes with The New Abnormal. At number 22, Against All Logic, 2017 to 2019. At 21, Gong Gong Gong, Rhythm and Drone 3. At number 20, Charlie Crockett, Welcome to Hard Times. Number 19, Tyler Childers, Long Violent History.
Love that album.
It's a great album.
It's really good.
Number 18, Waylon Storms, Rattle. 17 is Algiers with There's No Year. 16 is Loma, Don't Shy Away. At number 15, I have Emma Ruth Rundle collaborating with the band Thou with the album May Our Chambers Be Full. At number 14 is Chris Stapleton, Starting Over. Number 13, Boris with their album No. 12 is Imperial Triumphant with their album Alphaville. Number 11 is Open Mike Eagle, Anime Trauma and Divorce. At number 10 is Dougie Poole, The Freelancer's Blues. Number 9, Rina Sawayama, the album Sawayama. Number 8 is Ichiko Aoba, Windswept Adan. Number 7, Fiona Apple, Fetch the Bolt Cutters. Number 6, King Cruel, Man Alive. Number 5, Fleet Foxes, Shore. Number 4, Jessie Ware, What's Your Pleasure? 3, Natalia Lafourcade, Un Canto por Mexico, Volume 1. Number 2 is Bambara with Stray, and number 1 is Protomartyr, Ultimate Success Today.
Nice. That Fiona Apple album was weird. I really appreciated it a lot, but it was odd, you know.
Yeah. Have you listened to her stuff before?
A little bit. I've there's been. I think I tried to listen to her multiple years ago and didn't really care for it that much. But then recently, I've started getting more into her. But I still haven't.
Right.
I need to listen more. Yeah.
Yeah. I think her second album is probably. I think it's still my favorite. Fetch the Bolt Cutters. I mean, Fiona Apple puts out an album once every decade. But she is an artist that I feel her music is totally unique to her. She kind of progressed. She had her big breakout success in the 90s with, I think Tidal is her debut album. But then, she kind of progressed in a more experimental and avant-garde direction. And this Fetch the Bolt Cutters is entirely self-produced. She did all the instruments, all of the mixing and recording on her own in her home studio. And so I think it is a little rougher around the edges than maybe her previous couple albums.
And I think some of that is definitely intentional. It's supposed to be more raw.
Yeah, because it is a very personal album.
Yeah.
It's a lot about her experiences, her various relationships, and some of the abuse that she has suffered in domestic relationships. But I think it's a very powerful and really it's an album that gives me chills through various songs. And I think it's an album where everything from the production to the instrumentation to her lyrical delivery and the lyrics themselves, I think all come together to kind of really form a unique package. Really like that album.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Do you have any other you wanted to point out? I'm just pointing out the ones that I know, but sure. I also got into Tyler Childers this year.
Yeah,
I really, really liked him.
Yeah, I don't know any of those people. I mean, I've heard Fiona Apple and stuff, but it would actually hurt.
Yeah,
well, I know the Strokes.
Yeah, my sister showed me Child.
Yeah,
Child Childers.
Yeah. Tyler Childers is he's a country artist from East Kentucky. And he had kind of a really breakout album a few years back, but he hasn't gone in a direction I think that a lot of people would have expected. He hasn't really gone more mainstream, despite having a very successful debut or sophomore album.
Why I like him, because I really don't like much country, but I'm always I'm okay with the concept of country, but just every country song I hear is really stupid as hell. And he's one of the few where I'm okay, this is what I want. This is the type of shit I want.
Long Violent History is mostly an instrumental album. It's kind of a surprise record, and it's really a record that is based around the fiddle, and the tone of the fiddle on Long Violent History is so good. It's so rustic and rich, and there's just such a deep tone to the violin, to the fiddle on that album. And it's a lot of him covering some older songs, some more traditional songs. It's a very traditional album. And the final track is Long Violent History. It's the only track on there with lyrics. And that song is directly about police brutality, and is really kind of a message to many of his white rural fans, kind of, imploring them to, empathize with people of color, people who are upset and who have suffered on the hands of police brutality and other forms of racism. And he often kind of directly, he's like, look, if you experience these same things, how would you react?
Yeah.
And he references various moments in Appalachian history, and especially with I think it's an interesting album because I think people in Appalachia are usually have a bad image. They're usually portrayed as stupid, or poor and stupid and backwards and racist and violent. But it's so that is a terrible stereotype and cliche, and it's an album that I think really shows like the culture and the sense of warmth that can come from that region, and how there's a long history of, I guess, exploitation of that region. He references the coal towns where people weren't allowed to read certain things, where people had to people were if you worked in a coal town or like one of those coal camps, like you were literally surrounded by barbed wire and machine guns were pointed on you. He references the Battle of Blair Mountain, which is the largest labor uprising in American history, where bombs from World War I were dropped on American citizens. It's he is, I think, looking back at this history of Appalachia and being like, these people from Appalachia, you should understand how people of color feel on behalf of when experiencing discrimination and other forms of violence, because you've experienced this in your past history as well.
I think that is powerful in the sense too that I think that is a stereotype that I don't think is necessarily like brought out and shown to be wrong as much as other ones of that makes it. Like there's a lot of rightfully so. There's like when people use stereotypes on African American people, on gay people, anything like that. I mean, there are lots of very loud sections that will bring those people out and say this is wrong, and that should happen. I don't necessarily think that when people like play into stereotypes of like Appalachian people, coal mining people, even labor in general, it's just that kind of stuff is like I feel like a lot of times those stereotypes are like society doesn't really call it out when they should, and it's like that's also a harmful stereotype in the same way. Honestly, just the way that we talk about labor in general in this country needs to change a lot. But
yeah, I do want to shout out Open Mike Eagle with his album Anime, Trauma, and Divorce. His last album was Brick Body Kids Still Daydream, and that was about the public housing project Open Mike Eagle grew up in Chicago. And his music is always incredibly personal, very autobiographical. And this is especially true on Anime, Trauma, and Divorce, where he's talking about all kinds of topics, but often about his relationships, his marriage that failed, but also being a father, as well as he does talk about, I think, like the intersection between anime and Black culture, which I think is really interesting, which and kind of looking at characters in anime is kind of like role models. There's a song called like I'm a Joestar, which is he's he acknowledges in the song like this is goofy, but I see characters from JoJo's Bizarre Adventures as kind of role models, as these strong characters that I look up to, and how he himself is like the next Joestar, and it's a very, very good album. So.
Okay, I need to know if he got full in on it. Did he get a tattoo of a star on the back of his neck?
I don't think he did, but he does talk about that in the song.
It doesn't go hard enough then. If he wants to be the next Joestar.
Not even Dio's got it. Alrighty, well, I'll continue the music theme and talk about... I didn't really put too much thought into what, I guess, my top albums are or anything. I just have 10 albums that I just absolutely loved. I'll kind of just discuss just real quick.
Go for it.
First one, this is in no particular order. This is just the order I thought of them. Unleash the Archer's Abyss. Probably is my favorite like power metal album of the year. Unleash the Archer's the band that's definitely gotten bigger and more popular in the power metal community in the years, just because of Brittany Slade's like very powerful vocals and that. It's just nice to you just don't hear female vocals in the genre to be that powerful. Like as much as I love metal and everything, whether it be the male or female vocals, a lot of time the female vocalists are kind of fit into a certain something. Like this is the kind of voice they normally have, but just to have this kind of badass voice that she has is really great. Then the songwriting itself is really good. Like it's straight on metal, but a little more intricate than that, and it just has its full sound to it. It just comes together really well. So just straightforward, just badass album, and supposed to see them in September. Hopefully that sticks at Prog Power. I never know how to pronounce their name. Arion, weird to pronounce. Transitus. So people who don't know what this project is, it's pretty much one guy. I'm not even gonna try to pronounce his full name. Let's call him Arjun. It's pretty much this big rock metal opera where he gets a bunch of popular singers to play these roles, and definitely the last couple it's all been my favorite singers. Nice. Just singing this rock opera together. And just another one of those albums has a couple of my favorite singers like Tommy Caverick from Seven of Wonder and Camelot, and Kemi Gilbert from Oceans of Slumber in there as the two leads. About let's talk about racism. A dude from a rich family who's fallen in love with a black maid, and that's a bad thing. It's like in one of the songs called "Talk of the Town," where the main guy's brother is saying, "Yo, you're bringing our house down, man. Everyone's talking about us, and that's just not good." And there's all supernatural shit. The angel of death's involved, time travel, all that kind of stuff. It's metal. Amaranth, Manifest, a band I've been listening to for about 10 years at this point. Probably their best album since their second one, in my opinion. Nice. They just they went a little too far into the pop. Their pop metal went into too far in the pop for a little bit there. Still enjoyed it overall. Going back to more of the power metal side of things, just love it.
And new singer, right? Or is this the first one with the?
No, he's been. Okay. This is the second one. And speaking of that new singer, his band that I knew him from before he joined this band, Dynasty, The Dark Delight. Their first album I listened to came out in 2014 called Renatus, and that was kind of like balls to the wall power metal. I was thinking, okay, this is probably gonna be a one and done thing. I'm just gonna like this album, and I don't know why I thought this at the time, and I probably won't care if the next one could be more of the same. They've done a good job at keeping that general sound but mixing things up, and this is their fourth album in a row I just absolutely have loved. So they're now one of my favorite bands because of it. Just so badass, and he's one of my favorite singers. Just a very powerful voice. Stardust, their album Strangers. This is a weird one. I do not know how to describe. It is prog. It has a female vocalist, but kind of going back to what I was saying with Unleashed to Archers, where she doesn't fit the normal female vocalist mold in the kind of metal thing. It is kind of straightforward in some parts, but she gets really weird with it. I don't know. This band just gets really weird with stuff, just weird instrumentals and all that kind of stuff. I mean, this is one you guys might be able to get into. It just goes some weird, crazy places. And I also appreciate that she does some growls sometimes. Always appreciate a woman who growls.
Always.
Always. Aether Realm in their album Redneck Vikings from Hell.
What a title.
They are nicknamed the Swedish band from North Carolina.
Like they're all from North Carolina.
Yes, they are from North
That's
Carolina, but they sound, if you just listen to the music, you thought they'd be from Sweden.
Great. That's great.
And they go into that obviously with the title track Redneck Vikings from Hell.
That's awesome.
You know, that's some southern training to it and all that kind of stuff. Just very enjoyable, heavy album. From what I've heard from this, they got a little more clean vocals involved in this album compared to their previous stuff, which adds a nice balance to the stuff. The growls are fantastic and all that. Another band that's kind of rising a little bit, and again, hopefully I see them in September. Haken Virus.
Yeah.
Just, I love Haken, man. Just all that nice sweet prog. In some ways they seem to be going a little like heavier, just with their general instrumental, a little more straightforward, but don't go completely into it. I'm curious of what happens when they do go straight into it. But, you know, just a band I love. If you're interested in prog rock or prog metal and haven't heard these guys, give them a listen. They're generally seem to be considered the big thing now.
Yeah, I like me some Haken too from the little bit I've heard. Yeah.
And speaking of Haken, the singer had a side project this year, an album I loved. Novena, 11th Hour. The name of the album.
Lots of collaboration and side projects in the prog world.
Yes. This is still prog metal / rock, but I would say it's a little more straightforward than Haken, and that's why I kind of like it. Ross Jennings, the vocalist from Haken, doesn't do as much of crazy stuff, but still, you know, he still does some signature things. But I like this more straightforward approaches. I just love Ross Jennings' vocals, and it is also fun to hear his voice alongside some growls every now and then. There's not much of that in Haken. A little bit of it in some songs, but not consistently. So having that in there is nice. Green Carnation, Leaves of Yesteryear. This is just one of those bands that you just listen to like, man, emotional gut punch. They have I saw this band at Prog Power a few years ago when they I know I've mentioned this to you, Darby, before. They played one song. They played an album in full, which is one song, and it's an hour long. An hour-long song. They played that in full. That was just like, I was in a trance the whole time. It was absolutely amazing. This was their first album in forever.
So, like, on the album on Spotify, is it all under one song?
I believe so, yes. It's all just one thing.
That's great.
But this is their first album in a while, I think. Let me put it up. But this is a weird thing, like, because when it was announced, this is their first album in 15 years. It's a weird thing when this thing was announced and I saw the track listing. It's like 5 songs. One of them is a re-recording of a song, one of their first songs they wrote, I believe, and a Black Sabbath cover to close the album. Out of 5 songs, like, okay, you got me a little worried there. Then you listen to it, it's like, no, that's fantastic. And the cover song is Solitude by Black Sabbath. It is a very inspired choice and it works great.
Cool. Nice.
This one you guys might be able to get into, I think, for sure. Again, hopefully in September I can see them.
It's usually the theme.
And finally, Cryptex, Once Upon a Time. You guys may not know this band, but the band I'm about to reference, the reason why I got really into this band, I've learned this band from the Prog Power promoter, who is a big fan of the band Sabotage, who you will definitely hear of a Sabotage side project called Trans-Siberian Orchestra. Everyone's heard of that. The singer of this band reminds me a lot of John Oliva from Sabotage, and just musically in general, they're obviously inspired by Sabotage, which more bands need to be, because this is fantastic. I love it, and I even found on YouTube where they did a Sabotage cover. It's like, yeah, more of that shit, please. This album is just really great, just very piano-driven like rock.
Nice.
It's really nice.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I can jump in and talk about my favorite metal album of 2020.
Yeah.
It's Alphaville by Imperial Triumphant.
Okay.
They are a band from New York City. They're kind of avant-garde, black and death metal, and their music is really just. They are a band that they want to kind of capture this kind of juxtaposition between like the luxury and the opulence of like New York City, as well as the really gritty kind of I guess like slum and like the kind of filth that like in the dregs of like the city almost. It's kind of this juxtaposition, and they want to kind of put that together. And so their music is they kind of are able to work in like these elements of jazz and even like a barbershop quartet and like interesting percussion breaks without sounding like cheesy or hokey or kind of like gimmicky. I think they weave that into their music very well, and it's an album that sounds like, I think, New York, that captures everything from high-rise, opulent skyscrapers, things like Art Deco skyscrapers in like the 20s to like, the Lower East Side and, gang violence and other things like that. So really cool record.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I guess also Boris too. Boris is a Japanese metal band.
Yeah.
They've been around for a long, long time. They have like almost 30 albums. Wow. And so they are very intimidating, I think, to get into. But this new record of theirs, I think, is a great starting point. They have an album that a lot of fans point to called Pink that came out, I think, about 15 years ago. And that's also like a good starting point. And I think this album, No, is kind of like a return to that like accessible sound, but also very much in line with the band. A lot of sludge metal, crust punk, hardcore, very visceral. They sound like how they did 15, 20 years ago. And this is a band that's been around since like the early 90s, which is, I think, incredible for a band of their age.
Nice. Awesome. Well, I guess I will close out at least my musical section of this whole thing and talk about the definitely, I don't listen to a lot of new music nowadays, but this is easily my favorite album of the year and probably now one of my favorite albums of all time, which is the new Bright Eyes album, which is called Down in the Weeds Where the World Once Was. Had to look at that because I never actually I was like Down in the Weeds something or another. Bright Eyes are a band that I really only got into like 2 years ago. I think I always knew about like Connor or however you say his last name, Oberts or something. Yeah. And I like kind of knew of them, but I got into them 2 years ago, and they're one of those bands that it already suddenly feels like I've always listened to them because I really, really vibe with the lyrics and everything about it. It's very kind of emo melodrama, but it's not emo melodrama in a very like disingenuous kind of like exaggerated way. It's like I actually think the lyrics to these songs, and especially on this album, really do like feel like poetry in a lot of ways, but feel like he's able to like capture emotion, and he talks about like a lot of like actual historical events that I have to like go look up after the fact. He writes a lot about like people in poverty in Europe and stuff back in like world wars and stuff like that, or like American like conquest of like smaller nations and stuff like that. Like, he writes about a lot of like things that I don't quite understand, but like the way that the lyrics go and the way they like tell emotions through that is incredible. And I think Bright Eyes always has a big like wide range of how they sound and like different instruments they'll use, and it's kind of one of those like emo bands, but you associate emo bands being like Silverstein, something like that, right. Just like normal rock band. This is like there'll be an accordion, or there'll be like some like weird kind of instrument, or it'll like sound vaguely country at some points, and it just like goes around a lot of different places. But I just think that like musically wise, like this whole album is done so well, and I think Connor's voice is the best that's ever been in this. Like, it literally made me cry like towards the end, the way that like he really does sing with like emotion. It's very raw. His like voice will crack sometimes. It'll do like, it's just not a very like produced thing in a good way.
Yeah, I think it is. I did listen to this album, and I think it is really interesting, the contrast between his voice and then I think the really nice production, the really varied production on this album, the various instrumentation and the different directions and the tones and timbres he pulls into his songs. Really interesting.
Yeah, I really, really like it. It's one of those I've already listened to so much. I mean, previously I was already considering Casadega was my favorite album by them. The most popular one is the one that has the song from like Life is Strange, all those, like the I'm Wide Awake, It's Morning. I really like that one, but Casadega was always my favorite. And like every Bright Eyes album has a pretty different sound to it. Like that one is way more acoustic-y. Like it's just
country
like
kind of
it's just like him with an acoustic guitar, and then they also have like an electronic one. But Casadega was always more of a like semi-concept album, and it was this like kind of full band, but it was still changing a lot. And this feels like a lot more in line with Casadega. It feels like Casadega Part 2, basically. And I especially like some of the songs that the way that some of these songs just ramp up, and like they have like what feel like almost like cinematic like crescendos to the end of some of these songs. They're just really, really impressive to me. And they're like, I don't know, they're kind of a band that's intentionally controversial sometimes with their lyrics, but like I think in ways that are kind of powerful, you know.
Yeah.
Like you'll have a song that sounds really nice and peaceful, and you actually listen to what he's saying and it's like really fucked up. Or like he'll say some like really fucked up things in there. I don't know. The dichotomy is kind of cool. But one of my favorite albums of all time now, probably. Nice. It's really, really good. Yep. Alrighty, back to you, Jacob.
Yeah, I guess we'll hop on back to some television.
Let's do it.
Dark, the final season of the show Dark came out over the summer. And that is, I think Dark, which if you don't know, is a German sci-fi time travel show. It's on Netflix. And this is the final season, season 3, and it is, I think it's up there with some of the best sci-fi I have seen on television since maybe Fringe. It is a really good show. It is, like I said, it's a German language show, and it is about time travel. I don't really want to spoil too much, but pretty much I think the problem that you run into with a lot of time travel fiction is that time travel is inherently illogical. It doesn't make any sense. And I think the more something tries to explore and make its time travel make sense, the more problems it runs into, and it just kind of falls apart.
Just have time travel, man.
Yeah, I think Dark is just like, there's just time travel, and it embraces the fact that like there's going to be paradoxes, there's going to be things that don't make sense, and it kind of really runs with those ideas and explores them in really, really fascinating ways. And the cool thing about this show too is that because it is time travel, you know, you see characters in the late 2010s, you see characters in the 80s and the 50s and so on, and you'll see, you know, the same character like when they were young, when they are an adult, and when they're old. And I don't know how they found these people, but like there are characters who like, I mean, that is straight up this person when they were 16. I don't like that is that person.
Like you don't have to be explained, you know, like, oh, that's them.
You know, immediately. There's a character named Alexander Tiedemann, and you see him when he's, you know, probably like late 40s, and you see them when he's like a teenager, and like they have the same face. I don't like that is the same person, and they're not related. It's
to the point it had to be weird for them to meet each other to be like, wait a minute.
Yeah, like it is.
You're me, what the
Papa?
It is incredible like how they found these actors to play, you know, the same character but like in different ages.
So I gotta ask. So, you know, if it sounds like they did a good job, but finding actors that look the same. Was there ever a case of, oh, they got this actor because they look like them and not because they're good? Like
they're all really good actors. Okay, that's too. Good. That's another thing.
They just lucked out.
He can't act for shit, but he looks exactly.
Yeah, really great show. You know, it says a time travel story, so you have a lot of things where it's like a character. They know what happens in the future, and so they are trying to prevent what's happening in the future, but their very actions lead to exactly what they are trying to stop. Really great, really great elements of like, you know, trying to intervene and change fate and things like that. And I think it's a really really good story about generational trauma and how a lot of trauma that is passed from generation to generation is often the product of people out of love, of people trying to do the best they can to help their loved ones, people that they care about, which ends up producing trauma and problems, which just compounds on each other. So Dark is such a great show. If you like science fiction, if you like time travel, I cannot recommend it enough.
I have to give that a shot. I feel like my opinion on time travel as a storytelling device entirely depends on the last time travel thing that I've seen. Because I feel like I've gone through sections where it's like I don't want to do time travel. It's always stupid. And then I just played 13 Sentinels. Now I'm like, give me time travel. Let's go. It's so cool.
It goes places. It's a really
when time travel is done right, it can feel epic. It can feel like, oh shit, what's gonna happen?
Yeah.
You just have to, kind of like you said, you have to be able to either embrace the paradoxes or have a damn good explanation for them. But it's a lot easier to just embrace just be mysterious about it. It's cool.
What's next, Jeff?
We'll stay with TV shows. I told Barry I was going to do this. I'm kind of wrapping all superhero shows into one little thing.
Well, I'll jump in on you for one of them.
Yep. Well, we'll start with that one, Darby.
Let's start with
talk about Harley Quinn for a second.
Yeah.
Yep. Part of it when I was making this was like, okay, what TV shows did I actually see? I felt like I saw less this year, and like there's a lot of comic book superhero stuff, and they were all good.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know. Maybe because I didn't really see any CW shows.
I was about to say all you had to do is drop the Flash and Arrow, and you're good.
Unfortunately, the Arrow dropped to me, and I was sad to see it go. R.I.P. But yeah, Harley Quinn, Darby.
Yeah, this show I think is way better than. I mean, me and you were high on the trailers, but I would say it's way surpassed even that going into it, because I think it's like not quite. It's not quite on the level of another show that I'm sure we're gonna be talking about later. But like it does the whole like it's a comedy. And you get in there for the comedy, but then once you're there, it's like, okay, now we're going to make you feel feelings. Now it's also going to be a drama in disguised as a comedy, and I think it handled that well. Like it's actually a really good relationship story. It's a really good love story hidden within this wacky superhero comedy.
King Shark, man.
And yeah, the cast is just like really, really good, and some characters that you would not expect. I think Psy is probably like one of my favorite characters of the whole thing. He's just this like weird old man, but. Yeah, I'm sure you agree. That cast was just stellar. Yeah,
cast was excellent. Yeah, like you said, the story between Harley and Ivy was excellent. I think they did a good job as far as like, a fear of this is them overusing the Joker. I think they did a good job with it. I mean, we'll have to see what they do with them for season 3 and beyond, but that was a pleasant surprise. And then when they weren't there a lot, but when they did put in like Batman and Superman and Justice League and stuff, what they did with that was very good and entertaining.
I was pleasantly surprised by how much they were able to dip into the larger DC universe, but not
and make fun of it.
Yes, and make fun. Oh yeah. There's so much. I mean, I think I'm even someone that doesn't know a ton about DC, and it was still really funny to me. But I think if you are a DC person, they really make fun of everything. They go into everything in DC, and they're very self-aware of.
Yes.
It's just a very well written show, and I think they pace things out really well. Like that whole love story arc was paced out really well. And even though we all kind of knew where it was going in the end, all the bumps along the road were like really, really good. And even some of the characters that like because it did the cool thing where like Ivy is with this guy, and you want Ivy to end up being with Harley Quinn. That's what you want. Yeah. But you also really like her boyfriend too. It's like I want him to be happy, just not with her. Jacob. It's like that's really.
I never thought I would say this sentence, but this show made Darby care about Kite Man.
Oh my god! I don't even know who that is.
Exactly, he didn't. I never thought I would say those words. Darby cares about Kite Man,
and like it kind of like. The sheer fact of some of the characters that are in this is just making fun of DC because they didn't make up any new character. Every crazy, outlandish, stupid character that's in the show was somewhere in the DC universe.
Yeah, Condiment King showed up at some point. Do you know who that is? It's just literally a guy who uses condiments. like ketchup and mustard and shit. Derby, yeah, that'd be.
Comic
So is Cosmic King a thing? I was like,
Jeff
Cosmic
told
King-
me, he said like every character in the show exists in the DC universe. I was like, surely not Condiment King.
I was like, yes,
Surely.
Cosmic King.
Of course.
Of course, especially Condiment King.
Of course. He defeated the Justice League, man.
Is he from the Silver Age?
Probably, yeah. I can't remember
that
exactly
would-
when he was created.
that would
It's
make
been a
sense.
little bit.
Him and
Kite Man.
him and Polka Dot Man. Right?
Yeah.
But please let Suicide Squad be good. The Boys. It's probably the most popular, I would say, out of this bunch. Probably. As far as the most popular show. Maybe one of the one might be more popular.
There was definitely a moment there where like that was Twitter was talking about the boys a lot.
Yeah. So, yeah, this is a show where it pretty much does the whole idea of what if... Kind of the whole if superheroes were an our world thing. What would happen? And they went to it. Capitalism would happen. We would be marketing these superheroes to hell and back. Yes, these superheroes would be saving the day, but they would be signed to corporations with contracts and movie deals and all that shit.
And I think we all know that's the truth.
That is the truth. And they, and the titular of the Boys are a group of people that just want the superhero world to crumble down because it's actually very corrupt and people related to them have died and shit.
Yeah.
And they kind of want revenge, and part of that makes the show good. Like if I had to point to just one thing to kind of keep this short, is the guy who plays Homelander, which is the equivalent of Superman in this world. Anthony Starr is fantastic as him. He's just so good in every scene he is, and just the way he, this is a show that does kill all people and stuff, but a lot because of his acting, every scene he's in where it's like he might go crazy. Like, is this character actually going to die here? And a lot of times it doesn't, but his acting definitely makes you feel like, okay, this could happen.
Yeah, that's good.
Like, he can go off the loose in any moment, and it's great. Doom Patrol. Probably my favorite of the DC universe shows. Luckily, also like Harley Quinn renewed for season 3, especially since they had to cut season 2 short because of COVID, so it technically did not really get the real ending. But this show is great. It's one of the ones that I've kind of said since the first season premiered. I can probably recommend to people who are much in the comic book shows, superhero shows, like you guys. I think you guys could get a lot of the show because it's just... It is weird. It's like, it doesn't really necessarily go hard into like comic book... Well, it goes hard into comic book stuff, but not necessarily the normal comic booky stuff. And I don't want to say too much because there are a lot of spoilers, and I would want you guys to experience that, but just trust me, this show is great. And it goes to some wild places, and it's just... There are definitely some episodes where I get down, it's like, did I just watch that on my TV? Is that something that actually happened from a big company like Warner Brothers? Stargirl, another DC Universe show. I was pleasantly surprised by this. I didn't have much expectation going into it. It's kind of more closer to CW shows, especially since it's going to be on the CW from now, which I'm kind of worried about. But as far as the first season goes, it was really well done. It was more of a classic comic booky kind of show, just kind of more of a tame one, but the general story was really well done. Character relationships were really great, and it made me excited for it. Like seeing like the Justice Society of America and what stuff they actually did in this show just made me very happy. Like I saw a live action Grundy that didn't make me want to barf because of how bad it looked, and that's an achievement.
That's saying something. Huh?
Yeah, and. Well, yeah, the first... Oh, wait, never mind. Umbrella Academy.
Yeah.
Something else that was really big as well.
Yeah.
I think it's written by like a My Chemical Romance guy, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
It does.
This show also kind of went into some things because they got teleported back to the civil rights movement at the beginning of the season. Time travel and stuff. And one of the main characters is a black woman, and she was in the midst of all that. So it went into some things with that I personally thought were well done. I don't know how people at large felt about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely another one of those weird shows. But it's weird for me to say that when I just talked about Doom Patrol. It's like an in between, But it's really well done. And
There's layers. Yeah.
Yeah, if you enjoy like comic booky stuff or kind of want something that's kind of different, I can recommend any of these shows, except maybe Stargirl, which is really good, but more really well done normal superhero
Yeah, you have
stuff.
a wide spattering of like tones and vibes there within this video game. Freaking superhero.
Yeah, genre. So
Yeah.
that makes me really happy, especially, this is going to continue. Since all these shows are getting future seasons, and we now got the Marvel shows starting up with WandaVision, which has been really
boy.
good so far. We'll
So
do
excited
that.
to talk about
So,
WandaVision when it's all done.
Yep.
It's cool.
I got lots of superhero shit to enjoy. That's why we need Will on so I can geek out on this stuff with.
We do. And we will. We will. Love is War Season 2, baby. So damn good. Jeff, it's another anime. Again, we're slowly getting
We got him. We got him.
This is the thing. If you're unfamiliar with Love is War, Jacob or the audience, Love is War, it's basically, if you know like Death Note, you know how Death Note, like, just think about the vibe of Death Note and the whole like these two like masterminds against each other, and it does the whole like visual thing of like him versus L and all this crazy stuff. Okay, so this basically, the show is like that, except instead of it being like a killer and a prosecutor like going against each other, it's these two people in high school they both like each other, but they don't want to admit that they like each other. So they're trying to get the other one to admit it
first, right?
Yeah, and it goes like completely over the top with the like these elaborate schemes. So it's like, oh, I'm gonna do this, and then he's gonna like plotting this whole thing out to get him. It's like the visual style of it is so over the top in the best possible way. And they so often,
And the narrator and just that.
yes. Yeah, it like completely tongue-in-cheek playing into it the whole time, and they'll like do this like really, really cool, good animation of like they're like in war with like guns and stuff and doing all this, and it'll zoom out to what's actually happening in this like just like high school lobby area. It's a really funny, good concept, but it's one that I really, really thought, it's like they played that all the way through season 1. It was really good, but like going into season 2, like they still had not confessed their love for each other or anything. I was like, is this really going to be able to carry on for a whole nother season with just this premise? I was like, I really worry about this overstaying its welcome. So I was like, that's part of why I didn't watch this immediately. But then after I did, I'm like, oh no, they completely nail it. It's like, not only can they do a whole other season of this, I'm really, really glad they did, because they just, it's one of those, like, the overall plot of the show doesn't move forward all that often, but the characters themselves have a lot of like internal arcs that they go through. And in season 2 especially, I think the ancillary characters got like beefed up a whole lot more, and there was like characters that I really didn't care for in the first season that I really liked later on. And just like in the first season, it's mostly all comedy, but then there's a few times where it's like catches you off guard and you're waiting for the punchline, and it never comes, and it's like it's just like drama. It's like really good drama. So like I don't know, they just nailed it so hard. So now I'm like, I'm all in. Let's just keep going with this. And this was another one kind of talking about representation. This isn't the most, it's not like the most overt thing, and I'm not saying that it was all like, I don't even think they were trying to go for a crazy big message, but there was a part basically where a male character like dresses up as a woman, like in a way that was like, okay, I was just waiting. It seemed like it was going in kind of a respectful way, because like just the guy's internals like thoughts about all this, but I was just waiting for it to be played for jokes and waiting for the other shoe to drop, and it never really did. It's like in the next episode, it really was like this guy kind of had a emotional journey through his own like gender and identity and things like that. I was like, I was like really nervous going into the next episode. It's like, okay, how are y'all gonna handle this? And I think it was actually kind of touching. It was nice. So, show's real good.
Sounds good.
Yeah, if anyone wants to recommend anime to Darby, just know that it mainly needs cute anime girls.
That's all
That's
he
the
needs.
main thing.
I would talk about Euro Camp, but it came out in 2018. So for me, it was 2020. Also, that show's really good.
Next year, Darby, because season 2 is happening right now.
I know. I'm watching it now because I couldn't wait for the whole thing. So
we got him.
Right. Well, to continue, I guess, the anxiety of relationships, one of my favorite movies of 2020 was I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Charlie Kaufman. He's the director of movies such as Synecdoche, New York, and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. And this movie was just dumped, I think, in March straight onto Netflix. But it's a really, really good movie. Kind of I guess, I don't know how to describe it. Maybe like a psychological thriller or drama about a young couple. They've only been dating for maybe a little over a month, I think. And they're driving to visit the boyfriend's family for the first time in like upstate New York. And it is a really fascinating, a very dense movie. A lot of references to various things like literature and theater and stuff like that. But it is a deeply uncomfortable movie that I think really captures what it can be like to go visit family for the first time as a couple. But that is what the movie is literally about, but not what is actually about, if that makes any sense. It's a movie that I think is deeply interesting and terrifying in a way. It is a horrifying film, and I don't really want to give away anything, but it's a movie where it is not all that what appears to be is not what it is,
right?
When you start thinking about more and more of it, it's just kind of how unnerving and horrifying it can be. It's based off of a short story, I think, by Ian Reid. But I'm Thinking of Ending Things. If you want to watch a really unsettling, maybe a little more abstract movie, that's a good one.
Nice.
Alrighty. I think this technically first premiered in 2019, but it came out to us peasants in the US in 2020. Beastars.
Hey, I need to watch it. It's on my list.
Yep. So if people don't know, Beastars is an anime about a world where everyone is animals. And they really go into that because they separate predator and prey. That is a thing that happens, and it's kind of supposed to mirror like racial stuff, which I think you can look at and argue it's not done in the best way, but it's done in a pretty interesting way overall. And in this world, it is illegal for predators to eat meat, like to eat actual meat or anything. And they go into some stuff like the black market where people actually can get actual meat from. They use kind of like tofu substitutes or something like that, whatever, for the cravings or whatever. And a big part of this. And the story kind of sets up with some sheep dude getting eaten and killed in the school. And it's like, okay, obviously it is, a predator who did it and all that kind of stuff. So it sets up this murder mystery. I will say this for people looking into it just to keep their expectations in check for season 1. They really don't go much into that. I heard that's supposed to happen in season 2 and beyond and that kind of stuff. So there's that. But the main thing season 1 references goes into is I'm bad with names. This wolf dude, Legoshi or something like that, who fall in love with a rabbit girl, which not normally something that's done as far as like a predator and prey relationship. Prey or different breeds, have sex with each other because the bunny is like kind of sleeps around a lot. Like we see her sleep around with a deer and all that kind of stuff. So the interspecies thing's okay, but the predator and prey thing doesn't really happen. Partly because for Legoshi, his lust can be mixed up with kind of the urge to eat her. And that's kind of played like he's trying to downplay this urge. And it goes to interesting stuff. And I don't know, it's a very interesting world that plays into all this animal stuff and kind of using. And they kind of go into what is the more powerful animal that kind of have something into it. Like panda bears are going to be stronger than a lot of other creatures, for example. And then go through a lot of interesting stuff. Don't want to say too much more to kind of not give away a lot what happens, but it's a very interesting anime that I recommend watching, and it's on Netflix. Yes. Season 2, as far as I know, is premiering in Japan right now. But unfortunately, like a lot of anime on Netflix, we got to wait for it to finish there, and maybe it will sometime later show up.
Yeah, that is annoying about Netflix.
And also the good news is, because of this, though, there is a dub right away, I believe, for people who aren't into the subs.
Dope.
Beastars.
Dupe. Okay, my next one. We're now here's where kind of my loophole is, because I am gonna kind of be talking about video games, but
Get the fuck out!
but I'm talking about who I think was my favorite content creator of this year, and that was Maximilian dude on YouTube. I don't really watch his live streams very much, but
They're like 50 hours long.
yeah, the guy just never stopped streaming. He had a kid, and he still was just streaming.
He took a 2-week break, I believe.
Yeah, it was like nothing. Yeah, so Max is like someone, he's like mostly known for fighting game stuff. And like, I'm not the biggest fighting game guy, so I've always like, I enjoyed his content and everything, but he was never really covering stuff that I cared a ton about, so I never really watched a whole lot of his stuff. But then obviously this year with Final Fantasy VII Remake coming out, and Final Fantasy VII is his favorite game of all time, as it is mine. So watching his coverage, I started watching his coverage like leading up to that, and it was just really, really cool, because just watching him, he was like the exact same level of like this, of how much this game meant to him was the exact same that it meant to me. And I would watch him react to trailers that I had just watched, and he would like pop up at the exact same points that I would. He would reference the same things I did. I watched him play some of it, and like he teared up the exact same point that I did. It's like really funny. So it was like, I've never like had a content creator that like really are. It's like, okay, you really actually had the same experience I did, like as a kid, and then now here. And so it was just so much fun every single time any news came out about Final Fantasy VII, immediately going to see him, because he would just talk about it for like 30 minutes straight, and it was really, really fun. Like that was just a really fun time for the early part of this year, especially with the pandemic and everything going to shit. It was like, that was a nice thing to look forward to. It was like, ooh, Final Fantasy VII trailer, let's go see what Max has to say about it.
Yeah, the thing about Max, he's obviously known primarily for fighting games, but he also has the niches where he's also very known. Like obviously Final Fantasy VII, that's not just a you thing. People go to his stuff straight away from Final Fantasy VII stuff. Kind of extended to kind of Final Fantasy in general in some ways, but also for Capcom stuff in general, because he's always there, like immediately for like Resident Evil, Monster Hunter, and stuff.
Right? Yeah. And he's just like, he just seems like he's one of those that if something bad came out, I would be kind of devastated, because he just seems like such a cool dude.
Yeah, there was a controversy for him a while back, and this is one of those things like, okay, you know, he's kind of good people, where he kind of dropped the N-word, but from my recollection of it, it was kind of like in chat posted a tongue twister kind of thing, where he kind of
he's reading something.
Instead of the whole thing, you know, like normal YouTubers do with that kind of stuff. And again, this was an accident on his part, that, you know, in a different way than accidents for other ones. But he immediately felt bad for it. He apologized profusely, and it's like, it obviously bothered him. Yeah, like to a lot different than the other ones. Like immediately. Right.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't even aware of that. But yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, I don't want to get hung up on the like if he could be a bad person. It's just like I'm just saying that's one of those that like I felt close to his content so much this year, and I was like, I would be really shocked if something like that happened. But yeah, it's just he's just like a very funny dude, but very smart, and like it was just really fun to always like see what he thought. And especially I also want to point out, I think probably now, like, it's a weird thing, we don't really talk about what's your favorite podcast episode. That's not really something we like talk about, because why would we? But I think that Easy Ally spoiler mode for Final Fantasy VII that he was guesting on is probably my favorite podcast episode ever. And I have now gone back and listened to the entire thing again, because like he goes through all the different like levels of of like Final Fantasy 7 of like when you get to the
Galaxy
end.
brain.
Yeah, when you
Right.
get to the end and you like, it's like, wait, what's going on? And you like, okay, maybe this, then maybe this is like there's 4 levels, and it was like that. The way that he structured that podcast, like I don't know if he planned it originally, but because it seems so off the cuff, but he's like, okay, all y'all are on level 1 right now. Okay, we're gonna go through this slowly. I don't want to break the brain too much.
You're now level 3.
Yeah, like one of them would say, yeah, but what about Zach? And he'd be like, Ben, are you ready for level 3? He's like, no, I'm not ready. Well, we're going anyway. And
Yeah.
like that podcast was just so much
But
fun.
I know at the very least, Max by Planet, it's based. I can't remember what it was, of like the way they started out, or Damiani posted somewhere. That going into all that stuff wasn't planned. Like they planned to kind of not touch too much on the like theories and stuff. But then like when
But
Max
you
there
had
kind of
to.
took the wheels, like okay, yeah, this is just
And
it.
I know they had to like go to another spoiler cast so that they could talk more about the game. I hope they don't see that as a negative, because to me, I was like, no, I loved that, and I learned a lot about it too. Like there was a lot of things that I got immediately. Like I said earlier this year, Final Fantasy VII Remake was my like favorite post game discussion I've ever had in the game, because it was such a roller coaster of like emotions. Like I was mad, and then I was like accepting it more. Then I was mad again, and then I was happy, and then I was mad, and then I was like really happy, and now I'm like ecstatic. It was as you slowly piece things together.
Yeah, that was a painful like 4 days before you finished it. After I finished,
I'm sure. Yeah.
like I need to talk about this.
Yeah. So good. So yeah. Shout out to Max. He was awesome creator this year.
Yeah, he's a good dude, and I think the amount of like good feelings and like positivity and optimism he has with like how much he is on camera, I think speaks a lot to his character.
Yeah, and I mean, 2 things. I mean, number one, that video that he posted about meeting with the team of Final Fantasy VII and the people on the team, like telling him that it's like every time we were kind of like bummed out during production and didn't know what to do, we would show our team the video of him reacting to that original trailer, and that like gave them confidence. And then like Max was tearing up because of that. It's like I was tearing up because Max was tearing. It was like there's like he's very smart, but he's also like gives a shit. He like really cares about this stuff. He's very passionate.
Yeah, I think to add on to that way, shows he kind of gives a shit about the games he covers more than just from a money standpoint. That Marvel vs. Capcom 3 tournament he did a while back.
That was
and
the other thing I
That
was gonna
Killer
say,
Instinct
yeah.
tournament that he's announced that's happening a week or so, I think.
Yep, yeah. The fact that like he orchestrated that whole thing. He's like, yeah, we're not able to have like real tournaments right now, so I want to do this whole thing. And you know, I think that money was donated to charity and stuff too. It was like, yeah, it's really good. So shout out.
Yeah, I guess a podcast that I want to shout out is Game Studies Study Buddies with Cameron Kunzelman and Michael Lutz. Game Studies Study Buddies is a podcast on the field of the academic study of games. And what they kind of do is kind of like how you would do in like a college seminar, where they have a book and they kind of talk about the book and the ideas that are in it, and they critique it or break it down for you. And as someone who, you know, my background's not in any kind of media studies, I think it's a very approachable podcast. I think it's very interesting, and they cover a wide variety of books on their podcast. So they'll do some of the more foundational academic books to like the field of game studies, but they also cover books that are maybe more anthropological or sociological studies of the intersection of games and culture, different communities around games. And they'll even cover books that are a little more I'd say like maybe academic adjacent, that aren't like maybe published by like a university press, but they are academic and scholarly in their focus. But I think it's a really great podcast. I think they're great hosts, and you know, listening to that podcast has certainly changed the way that I think about games and the way that I you know, analyze them. And I think for them to have this podcast and all these books that they cover, to make it so accessible to someone like me, who again, I don't really know a lot of the theory behind a lot of these books, but it's very approachable and accessible, and just a really good podcast.
What was the name of that again?
Game Studies Study Buddies.
Okay. That sounds cool. Yeah, I'm going to check that out.
Yeah, so if you're interested in, you know, how do people think about games like in an academic way, I think this is a very valuable tool. And like if I was in like a grad program and like my program of study was like game studies, I think this would be an incredibly valuable tool.
Well, it's cool because I mean I think like books and movies and TV shows and stuff have been around so much that stuff's plentiful. You can find all that stuff everywhere, but I feel like gaming coverage, I guess it's just too young of a medium, and it was not always nearly as like. I mean, games didn't have stories for a long time. It was not really something that you would look at from that perspective. Not that necessarily story. You have to have a story to be academically studied, but it's not something that's
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely recommend. I think their first episode is on. I can't remember the name of the book. It's Jesper Jewell is the author, and his book is very foundational for the field, where it kind of breaks games, between ludological and narratological lines, and which is more of a spectrum, really. But it's very interesting. Yeah, you can think about games that don't have stories, and also I think very interesting ways because the act of playing and making games is such a fundamental thing to people.
Yes. Yeah, it sounds cool. Check it out.
Has problems there, Darby?
Yeah, my computer likes to have seizures every now and then. It's been a problem the last few weeks. But we shall carry on, Jeffrey.
All right. Talked about an anime last time. Let's talk about mangas. A mango.
All right, these are my favorite mangoes of 2020.
My favorite mangoes. Yeah, I have two here. I'm gonna shout out as I guess new mangas. One of them. The first one I'll mention is not one that started in 2020, but it kind of found popularity in 2020, and that is Chainsaw Man. This is a manga that runs in Shonen Jump, but when you read it, it's like, how's this in Shonen Jump? It's a lot more brutal than a lot of stuff. In one chapter, it had a bunch of crazy sex junk, so they had to make it online only because it's apparently bad for it to be on the app. But on their website, it's okay. It's okay. It's just a weird thing that I don't know how to discuss it because I would want people to experience everything. But it's very brutal, and it's a very interesting manga because it's relatively short. I think it's like 80-something chapters or something. Or at least the first part of it that just ended a little while back. But it's a pretty quick read because some of the many of the chapters are just a bunch of action stuff with this fantastic brutal art. But then the reason it's popular as it is because of the kind of story and the world building and stuff they do. Because with Chainsaw Man having these kind of possessed by the Chainsaw Devil. And there are a bunch of other devils like the Gun Devil, Bomb Devil, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And having a bunch of different abilities and that kind of stuff, and I don't know, it gets really weird. Very brutal, and the ending is really fucked up. Alex, who's been on some of our stuff, also really likes it, and we thought it was just ending, but they announced this is just the end of part 1. Nice. I'm like, oh fuck, where's it going from here? And there is, for people who don't like actually reading the manga, they have announced an anime adaptation. Who I'm blanking on the name of the studio, but recently they're doing Jujutsu Kaisen, which is another Shonen Jump wing that I really like, but the animation for the anime is fantastic.
So it's like the most experimental weird thing that's been on Shonen Jump.
Maybe not ever, but it's different for recently. Yeah, it's a very weird one that some people may not like, but it's a very interesting story altogether. I have no idea what you guys would think about it because it's just so interesting going on. Like some of the story stuff is kind of more. I don't know if subtle is the right word. I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain.
I mean, I watch anime stuff now that I never thought I would have 2 years ago. So who knows?
And the second one is completely different from Chainsaw Man. Spy Family.
I don't think I've heard of this one.
It is a story which mainly about two countries that are kind of against each other, but I don't think they actually say the name of the countries. I can't remember exactly. Whatever, but the main character is a spy who's trying to get information from some rich dude or whatever. So I guess some guy who has information. So to do it, he has to create a fake family to get close to him.
Okay, yeah. I do.
So what he does to do this, I'll just mainly say the premise, and hopefully this will be enough. It is a comedy series. It's very cute. So at first he adopts a daughter who just happens to be able to read minds. So she's reading everyone's minds. She's not supposed to know what her new dad is doing, but she's reading it and just reads his mind and just sees him as like a superhero kind of thing, like saving the world kind of thing.
Yeah.
And to do this fake family, he also had to find a fake wife. He did, who happens to be an assassin. And again, the girl can read her mind and just sometimes reads the mind of her, and while the mom's imagining like killing someone, and she freaks out. But normally the wife is pretty well mannered and everything. It's just like when she's in assassin mode, she's just kind of brutal and all that kind of stuff. Normal anime stuff. And the mom and dad don't know what each other actually do. The girl does.
It's a really clever mechanic to have the daughter who knows everything but doesn't understand the importance.
He doesn't understand what's going on, and her big thing, as far as like her main role, is to infiltrate a school where the guy who the dad's getting close to, son is enrolled in, and there's in-school shenanigans with that and all that. And at some point, they get a dog who is like awesome. By the way, the dog can see the future,
of course,
and he's a very intelligent dog. He's been experimented on, and the girl can read the dog's mind, so she sees some of the future stuff she sees, even if she doesn't completely understand it all the time.
That's awesome.
It's just a really great series. And again, Alex, from what I've known, has read it and really likes it as well. I'm hoping, like, it's done really well. So I'm really hoping this gets an anime. It's one of those things I can see you getting into, Dari, for sure.
Yeah,
especially with your recent trend of stuff.
Sounds very fun. Yeah. Awesome. Is that the last one?
Yep.
Nice.
Plenty of other stuff, but those are the new ones.
Nice. Alrighty, down to my final two things I got. So this next one is going to be another show, or not TV show, another like podcast thing. It's another podcast, and it is My Brother, and Me, which is, I mean, definitively my favorite podcast of all time. Now, like as far as
even more than the Nerds at Large gaming podcast.
Oh God, yeah. Have you seen that Darby guy?
Yeah, he does fucking suck. He does bring it down.
See them? Yeah, I mean, if it was just Jacob talking, I mean, then maybe we could talk.
Sorry, Jacob, you're taking over solo.
No, I've been listening to My Brother, and Me for like multiple years now. Alex is the one that showed me them a while ago, and I've now just gotten obsessed with all the McElroy content, including the Adventure Zone and everything else. But My Brother, and Me is just like it's a comedy advice podcast where like they've been doing. I think they've crossed 500 episodes. They've been doing it for like 10 years at this point. And like their humor is like, I think, is the most direct match to like the humor I find funny. It's like a 1-to-1. It's like it's insane. And like watching them this year, I've been listening to their podcast forever and ever. I've even started re-listening to some episodes because it's just like anytime I just need something on in the background, it's My Brother, and Me. But especially this year, it's been like really nice to have them because they're like three guys that they've gotten into. Like some of them have been like video game writers at Polygon, and then like one of the brothers is like a theater guy. But for the most part, they're three guys from West Virginia, and they're just like very ordinary guys. They were not like super wealthy or super poor or super anything else. They were just like kind of normal people in West Virginia, and just like they're very honest about like things they don't know. And it's been very cathartic to go through this year and just everything that's bad that's happening in the world, and them just kind of sometimes breaking the comedy and being like, yep, the world sucks. It's like just being like very honest. It's been kind of a nice reprieve every week as the country falls apart and as everything else happens to watch this. And then also on the other end, and probably one of the main reasons I want to really highlight them is starting at the protest that happened like last summer. They started every single week for their like ad revenue. They started giving to charities, and they've pretty much done that every single episode the entire year. and they were being very upfront about like which charities they were doing, and they were like suggested other things. They're like, yeah, we'll do that too. We'll do that. You know, they've been very vocal about things like that, and even when some people kind of criticized them for taking stances like that, they, you know, pretty routinely said like, no, fuck you. It's like, I don't know, I'm just appreciating. Yeah. I've really appreciated them doing all that and just being just a very nice warm blanket. And, you know, for 2020, it was very nice. Yeah.
So I guess my final thing to talk about, which I guess would compete with Dark as maybe like my favorite show of 2020, and that is The Haunting of Bly Manor, directed by Mike Flanagan. It is kind of a successor series almost to The Haunting of Hill House, which came out a couple of years ago. And the Haunting of Hill House, which is an adaptation of, I believe, the book by the same name by Shirley Jackson. I like that show. I liked Hill House. I think it's a show that definitely though had problems, and it absolutely peaked maybe about 2/3 into its 10-episode run, but I still enjoyed it nonetheless. And The Haunting of Bly Manor, I think, is even better than Hill House. I think it is just really just phenomenal. It is a great show. A lot of the cast returned from Hill House, but it is is an adaptation of a different story of the 19th century novella, The Turn of the Screw. And whereas Hill House is set in, I think, Massachusetts, this is set in England and during the 80s. And it's funny because a lot of the actors in the show in Bly Manor, they are American actors, and they are doing their best at English accents and Scottish accents, which maybe is my one criticism is that some are better than others.
Yeah.
But it's a really enjoyable show nonetheless. I don't think it's as scary as maybe Hill House. I'd say it's about a 2 or 3 out of 10 as far as scary, but maybe like a 10 out of 10 for tears. Because it is a very just it's a love story. Ultimately, it is a really moving, I think, love story wrapped in this ghost story shell, and really, really good job. There's an episode, I mean, even if you have no interest in watching this, there's an episode, it might be the penultimate episode, I can't remember, but it's all in black and white, and it's kind of like the story about what happened at the manor before, all the other main characters arrived, before, it happened centuries ago. Like, why is this place haunted? And that is such an incredibly good, like, ghost story. I think the ideas that it employs in that single episode are so powerful and so fascinating. So even if you have no interest in watching this, maybe just watch that 1 hour long episode. But yeah, Bly Manor is really good. I think really well done. Not a lot of jump scares, very atmospheric. It does a great thing where, I mean, this was kind of in Hill House too, where they were kind of ghosts hanging out in the background. And so you kind of see them out of frame a little bit. And I think Mike Flanagan kind of elevates that technique even more in Bly Manor. Yeah. Like
things are scarier when they're not pointed out, and it's just something that's like in the background.
Exactly. Like there's a moment where like the main character, I think she's down in the kitchen, and there's like a sink faucet, and she kind of hears something, and she turns around, and you see the sink faucet in the background, and I think she looks back and then turns around again, and then like walks away. But the sink faucet that was out of frame is no longer a sink faucet. It's now like the nose of like a plague doctor. So like really, really subtle, kind of unnerving things like that. Really interesting ideas that I think before the show came out, I'm like, oh, that'd be a neat idea for like a ghost story that it actually like uses in the story. So it's like, oh, that's a thing that like I thought would be really cool, and it was cool to see it employed in Bly Manor. Yeah, I think it's better than Hill House. I think it's a great show. If you're I think people will enjoy it if they're into horror, and even if they're not necessarily into like horror or like ghost stories, I think it's still a really good show because it's, again, not that scary, but I cried a lot during the show, so
awesome.
It's really good.
And Raul Coley's hot, so
Yes.
You have that going too. So.
I heard he has the worst British accent on the show.
Yeah, God, his British accent's terrible.
The joke is he's British. They made him do the Scottish accent, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. What I want to do. You know what? I'll do this. Shout out to the couple things that. So one thing that people probably missed in 2020 is concerts. I know I did, but I was lucky enough to see a couple before everything shut the fuck down, including one like literally the day before tours literally started getting canceled. Like I was on the ride home from the show when things started getting canceled. I'll highlight 2 of the shows I went to. There were 3 of them. Thrice, you're great, but the other 2 were more special. One, Devin Townsend. The other one, Silverstein. They are Devin Townsend and Silverstein, 2 of my favorite artist groups, whatever. So I was happy to see them both before all this shut down. For Devin Townsend, I just love his music. He's a weird guy who's went across all these styles, just like death metal and ambience music or whatever.
Oh yeah,
to like just regular prog.
He
and
is
all
the
that kind
definition
of
of variety.
Yes. So seeing his tour is great. I did a meet and greet with him, which was fun. That's awesome. And all that. Talk to him for a second. I also got to see Haken at that show, which was also great, and the Contortionist. That was just a packed prog night.
I forgot the Contortionist was there.
Yeah, that show that was great.
That was awesome.
And it was at my favorite venue, Center Stage.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
too.
so we'll see that. Devin's weird in the case where they didn't have a big stage setup. What he did was like announce before, hey, if you guys want to donate stuffed animals so I can put on stage, that'd be great. Then after like 2 days, like, okay, you guys can stop giving me stuffed animals. Okay, so you guys won't stop. I'm just gonna donate all the spare ones to charity.
There you go.
And how that go around at some point during one of the more he has a song called Why on his latest album, which is like a Disney-esque song. Nice. He was like, okay, on the European tour and right now, I asked my female guitarist and my backup singers to wear dresses. They said they would if I did. So I'm doing that. And he just took off his pants in front of everyone and put on a tutu and all that kind of stuff to go into the wackiness. The show was great and I loved it. For Silverstein, they were doing their 20th anniversary as a band.
Yeah.
So they were doing 3 sets. Greatest hits, acoustic, and Discovering the Waterfront, which is their most popular album in full. Discovering the Waterfront, kind of wish they did it for one because I've seen it already. But the show was great. They actually, for the greatest hit, went into some deep cuts in the acoustic set, which were nice songs I didn't think I'd see.
Nice.
So all that was great, and did some crazy medleys for Daria and our visit to you. Like, this is how the wind shift. They played most of the album in like a 10-minute medley,
which that is very cool.
Yeah,
they should just play the whole album in full.
I agree. And the show was fantastic. Those 2 shows probably high up my all-time
especially
list.
that you didn't know at the time that was going to be.
Yeah, and I was able to get rail for both of them, which was great. Yeah. And I know my mom loved that show because we got tickets to see Silverstein because it got postponed multiple times. Yeah. We now have tickets to see that tour, the same tour, 21 months later, in December, right before my birthday.
I hope you can go to it. God, I do miss shows. I really miss shows.
So yeah, Darby, if that thing happened around then, if you just want to go see Silverstein,
I'll probably be itching to do anything. It's like, obviously love Silverstein to death. I wish they weren't playing Discovering the Waterfront again, but
yeah, I never thought I would potentially see an album for the 3rd time.
Yeah. And me and Jeff are supposed to be going to see the Final Fantasy VII orchestra concert in April. Kind of have a feeling that
has not been canceled yet. Well, what they did decide to do at the Japan show that's happening in like a couple weeks is just do a live stream for people who bought tickets.
I don't.
Yeah,
that's not the same.
I know.
I mean, if it still happens, I will wear a mask and not touch anyone, and but.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, because of social distancing, that's not happening. Unless they just randomly let people's tickets to refund.
Yeah. All right. My final thing, and it's going to be a joint me and Jeff show here.
Don't assume.
Yeah, Jeff just doesn't want to talk about it, I guess.
The memories.
I mean, it's painful in some ways, not in a quality way, just in an emotional way. Bojack Horseman Season 6, the grand finale to my favorite show of all time, cemented. Completely no question about it. God damn, that show is so good.
It's true.
And I think that ending was perfect. I really do. I mean, it's one of those that it made you think about it for a while. It's a very kind of understated ending, which I think is perfect for that show.
Yeah, that's what that show needs.
Yeah, there's a little. I can't remember. Is there a little controversy to it because people have wanted to be more bombastic one way or the other?
There was, and I'm not surprised. I can understand someone saying that because it's you're just used to when you're used to the culmination of a long running show being this big thing.
It's like the Sopranos problem.
Yeah. But I think it would have been a lot worse if they tried to do that. I think the whole thing with BoJack Horseman was that it's like, I think it was always going to be a bittersweet ending, and it was always going to be like a life, kind of a life goes on type of ending. It's not going to be a grand big thing that happens that it's like everything is saved or everything is ruined. It's like, no, BoJack is like a lot more like, we all knew like BoJack's whole arc was so captivating because like you really cared about him and wanted him to be happy, while at the same time you knew he deserves everything bad that's happening to him. And like, even though you care about him, you want everyone else to get away from him because he is a toxic force on everyone else's life. So like, you're constantly, you don't know how you feel. And I think the fact that you don't know how you feel at the end is right. I think even at the end, it's like you're kind of happy for him, but there's also, it's like there's some things that are never going to be the same. There's some things that he can't just fix because he is of his actions. And I don't know. I thought about that whole season and that last episode for months and months and months afterwards.
Yeah, it's everything Darby said, and just kind of a reason that I think it's such a great show. It is an animated show. It is a show with all these animal people, but the way they do that is so great with the gags and all that kind of stuff. And it is a show that I fully believe they could not make a show this good with a similar premise in live action. Then take away the animal people part. Just like what they did with imagery and all that kind of stuff. You couldn't replicate that.
Yes.
So when people kind of say animated stuff can only be so good or just for kids or kind of stuff, it's like, this is a show where, I mean, there are plenty of them like could have, but this is like the main one. Like, no, look at this.
Right. And I mean, you think there's a lot of shows that have like a standout episode where they went really super experimental and everyone's like, even if you don't watch the show, you gotta watch this one episode where they did this really special thing. BoJack has so many of those where they took an interesting concept where you could see them in the writer's room and one of them pitches an idea and they're like, that's going to be really hard. Let's do it. Like that's like a very interesting. I mean, they have like, I won't spoil a lot of things, but they have things like, and I don't even think this was the last season, but I'm just talking about part of this is BoJack, the culmination of everything. They have like an episode that is an entirely one shot on BoJack monologuing.
Yeah.
And it is one of the most emotionally impactful episodes I've ever seen in my life. They have episodes where it was just slapstick comedy with no dialogue. Also really, really good. And then like some of the ways that, like you said, with the live action thing, like the stupid piece of shit episode, or there's a bunch of other ones where they like through the animation like illustrate something that's happening that's not really happening in the same way. It's like, yeah, some of those things, the like kind of fluidity they had to tell this story because it was in that animated style was so perfect. And even though I think this show has better drama than most dramas, it's still hilarious. It's still really funny. It's I struggle to see something else like capturing exactly what BoJack captured for me. I think it's truly once in a lifetime type of show, I think.
Unfortunately, like I know there are people that love it. It doesn't seem like it's being held as regarded as like a whole society as that, unfortunately.
I'm just happy it was like I would have been devastated if BoJack couldn't have gotten to a satisfying ending. If it got dropped or something, that would have been like that would have.
Sorry, Netflix, unsubscribe.
I would have been completely devastated. Yeah. Have you watched? How much Bojack have you watched?
I've watched all the way to season 5.
There we go.
Yeah, so I just need to watch this last season.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Hopefully we didn't hype it up too much, but it's very good. I mean, they stuck the landing.
Yeah, I think. If you've seen BoJack, you know it's going to end in one of two ways, and I think. But it sounding like it does stick the landing. I think is good to hear.
Yes. Yep. Mm-hmm. Do you have another one?
I do. Just one final thing. Part of the final season premiere there, or I guess part of maybe the last few seasons. I don't know. DuckTales.
Hey, there it is.
We started with Ben Schwartz for me. We're ending with Ben Schwartz with me. Because he is also in this show. He is a little Dewey Duck. Also, one thing with the show, like, if I didn't know any better, I would swear all the triplets have the same voice actor. They all kind of sound kind of the same to me, and they all have distinct voice actors. It's like, yeah, I don't know. But it's great. The show's so good, and fuck Disney for canceling it. Disney apparently has a thing that once the show gets kind of past like a 60-ish mark where it qualifies for syndication or whatever, they kind of cut it on most shows. And that's kind of what happened there. Apparently the writers knew this was coming, so they were able to do an ending for it.
Yeah.
So, which I don't think it's premiered yet, so... but anyway, this show's great. It is a kids show, but definitely one of those where it's supposed to appeal to adults, because this is supposed to be kind of a nostalgia trip for the people who watch the Disney afternoon block and watch old DuckTales and Darkwing Duck and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. You get some references to the character, and they sometimes where they have those characters in it, it's not like a forefront, but that kind of style is there throughout. And obviously, yeah, if you watch old DuckTales or read DuckTales comics and stuff, you get a lot of stuff here, because I was surprised to hear a number of how it sounded like how few of these characters are original to the show, and they've just been a thing for decades.
Yeah.
And that was really great. I don't know, following these adventures has been really fun. I'm sad to see it go. It's just one of those shows that the comedy hits for me a lot of ways. Again, it's a kids show, but the way they do it is really well. The lore of the world and everything is good, and like how the character arcs have developed and all that kind of stuff. And David Tennant is such a great Scrooge McDuck. It's
I forgot.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, that was like perfect casting as far as getting someone for Scrooge, especially even if they want to go a big name. That's just great. Yeah, it's really great. I recommend the show. It's on. I don't know how much of it's on Disney Plus. I'm only thinking at least the first 2 seasons on it. I think a lot of people have Disney Plus at this point. I recommend giving it a watch and see how you feel about it.
I love that we started with She-Ra and with DuckTales.
Fuck yeah.
I love it.
Well, yeah, awesome. Unfortunately, it is a Disney kids show. That doesn't go I think it kind of toys a little with the kind of representation stuff. I just thought about this because you mentioned She-Ra. A little bit of that, but doesn't go really far with it, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, not everything has to be social commentary groundbreaking, but yeah.
And it's kind of it's kind of there.
Yeah.
Also, I just love the triplets mom, Della Duck. I didn't even know she was really a thing until this, but I love her. And I mentioned it to Dari, when I saw the female Lombax on the Ratchet and Clank things, her design's just Della Duck, but Lombax versus just all around the way she's dressed and everything. I don't know.
That is the main inspiration. It might be. You never know. Could be. It's some inspiration.
You probably a surprising amount of people are influenced by DuckTales one way or the other.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure. Everything leads back to DuckTales.
Everything.
Well, guys, thank you so much. That was a blast.
Yeah.
We have quite a list of cool things here, and I think we should do this again next year, because I kind of like having the smorgasbord of content creators, albums, TV, because we have other interests. People could probably watch our podcast and have no clue. Well, aside from his shirts that Jeff has, is super big into prog metal and things like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool. So that was a lot of fun. Thank you guys. Peace.
Bye.